Hello, everybody. Bill Platt here, and I just wanted to discuss with you today the principles behind selling books. Now, I try to make these things short, and I'm going to try and make this one short as well. But sometimes I run a little bit longer than I intend, but I do hope to keep this one around 20 minutes. So, with within the context of the work that I do, I often consult with other product creators about their sales copy. Now, I did go through two different sales pages this morning, made recommendations on each, and those creators will probably implement what I advise them to do. Now, I also had a conversation yesterday with somebody who purchases my training, and they were asking about selling books. And so I saw that as an opportunity. The two situations, how they dovetail together, and how uh, I should probably bring to you my introduction to selling books. So, a lot of this information can be applied outside of selling books. It can be applied if you're selling software, if you're selling training products, if you're selling physical products, even if you're selling books, coloring books included, journals included, nonfiction and fiction. I'm going to cover it all. So, let's go ahead and get started here. There are three primary questions that we need to cover within the context of this training, and that is, who is your target market? Why do people buy? And what do people need to see to make a purchase decision in favor of your books? So let's get to the first section real quick. Who is your target audience? So, who is most likely to want to buy your book? And I'll go into the details of that in just a second to kind of give you some background info on it. But it is important for us to understand who our audience is. And when we understand who our audience is, we can put ourselves into the shoes of people who are looking to buy our book. If we can narrow down and focus on that specific audience of buyers, then our success rate is going to go up. Now, to give you an example, in my case, I sell a lot of training to book authors, but I don't sell it to all book authors. My distinction is that I sell to self published book authors. And the reason that is, now I'll be very clear about it, if somebody is with a traditional publisher and they are not self published, they are going through a traditional publisher. In most cases, they are sitting down and writing the book, telling the story, then handing it over to the publishing company. And the publishing company does several things. First, they're going to edit, then they're going to format, then they're going to design a book cover for it, then they're going to design the marketing materials, the book description, and so forth. And then they'll design all the advertising to bring buyers to that particular book. So we've got 5 steps there in the process. But as self published authors, we don't have people to help us do those things. So the traditional author is only concerned with writing a good book and then turning it over to his publisher to complete the other 5 steps. The self published author, as a self published author, we have to bring our many talents to the equation. Once we've written the book, then we have to edit it, we have to format it, we have to do a book cover, we have to do a book description, and then we have to do the marketing to attract an audience to our book. So, whereas the traditional published author doesn't need to know these extraneous things, the self published author needs to know these extraneous things beyond writing a book. So that's what I teach to my customers is how they can do the additional 5 steps after they've written their book. So it's 6 steps for the self-published author, and it's 1 step for the traditionally published author. So I focus on the self-published and bring to them the kind of information they need to be able to put together. So in a lot of cases, the training I produce is only applicable to the self-published author. Unless I'm writing a book on how to write, which I've done that before and I will likely do it again. The how to write will apply to anybody who writes books, and the extraneous items like book cover, and editing, and book description and marketing only applies to the self-published author. And I'd be a fool to try to sell those items to the traditionally published author, because the traditionally published author does not need that additional information. So I hope that makes sense. Um, so we need to decide who is most likely to want to buy our book. We need to understand who those people are. And then we need to put ourselves in the shoes of our buyers in order to lead them in the direction we need them to go, which is towards the buy button for our book. Now, here's another example of that. Let's look at recipes. If you're doing a cookbook or a recipe book, there are typically four different groups of people who will be interested in buying your recipe book. So the first one is going to be your work at home mom or stay at home homemaker, someone who doesn't have a lot of things going on. They might be running kids and taking kids and cleaning the house and cooking dinner, but they don't have a whole lot of things pressing in on their time. So their primary focus is going to be, do I have the ingredients I need? Can I afford to buy those ingredients? Because a lot of times, if she is stay at home, then it's a household with only one income. So therefore, finances become a consideration. So in her case, we've got the financial aspect of extending out the family income to cover all the necessary needs of cooking dinner. We also have, she wants to give healthy foods to her children. And then if it takes a little bit longer to cook, that's okay because she's got the time available to do that. Now, the professional woman is another market here, because a professional woman, she's working 40 to 60 hours a week at the job. Then she comes home and she still has to prepare dinner. So her focus is still going to be on the healthy eating, but she's less concerned with the cost of food preparation and more concerned with how long it takes to prepare a meal. So in the case of the stay-at-home homemaker, she's not really concerned about how long it takes to make dinner, but the professional woman is intently focused on how long it takes to prepare this meal. And then another market would be the guy who has a barbecue grill outside and he wants to entertain every weekend and have his friends over and have family over. And he's more inclined, he's more directed towards, how can I make this food taste awesome? How long do I need to cook the meats for? How can I make my weekend cookout more satisfying than my cousin's weekend cookout deal? So he's going to be interested in the taste of the food and how he can become a better cook. So that's his focus. Now, the fourth group is somebody who spends a lot of time watching the chefs on TV, and they're more focused on the exotic tastes of food. So for them, it's more about taste and less about impressing their friends, and less about cooking a quick meal, and less about making a healthy meal. They're more inclined, if it tastes good, it's perfect. So here we've got four different audiences who might be interested in your cookbook. And so when you sit down and write your book description, you want to specialize. You don't want to say, this is perfect for homemakers and professional women and guys who cook barbecue. Because your book is not going, if you try to appeal to everyone, you'll satisfy no one. So we have to specialize. We have to designate who is most likely to want to buy our book. And then we have to present our book to them in a way that appeals to their needs and wants. Okay. Now, there's a couple years ago, there was a event that was done online for book authors. Now, what was interesting about this, and the reason I mention it, is the information it was a event for product creators, but it's also an event for book authors. And the thing that I found so strange about is they were trying to appeal to two markets. And I thought that was silly. Why are you doing that? So they had like it was a buy-in for like 197, and then you get 4 days of content given to you online as if you went to an event, but you've got 4 days of content coming towards you. And half of the presenters were product creators, and the other half were book authors. So they were trying to appeal to both markets. And I advised that they were barking up the wrong tree with that approach, that the thing would most likely fail because the person who's interested in writing a book doesn't want to know about product creation and vice versa. The guy doing product creation doesn't care about writing books. Okay. It's two different audiences completely. And I advise them to split the sales page into two elements. And I said, put one sales page up that is just product creators. So you got the list of all your product creators, and your sales copy is written for that audience. And then on the second one, you've got just book author presenters, and your sales copy is designed for people who only write books. And you can make the delivery a combined effort, but you have to do two individual sales pages. And they decided that my advice wasn't worthwhile, and they ended up losing $12,000 on that uh, product, on that offer. They spent a whole lot of money putting that thing together, and they completely lost their ass. And I can't feel sorry for them because I told them what they needed to do to fix it, and they wouldn't listen. So it is what it is. I'm not saying that to be mean or anything like that, but we do need to specialize when we're making our presentation of our book to our audience. We need to know which audience we're talking to and customize our presentation for the specific audience we're talking to. So instead, if it's the stay-at-home mom, we want to write a different book description for her than what we write for the professional woman. And we want to write a different description for the weekend barbecue guy. And then we want to write a different description for the person who loves the taste of exotic foods. Okay. So that's the deal. We have to specialize. There's a old saying, if you try to appeal to everybody, you'll appeal to no one. And that's often the case. So you have to understand who is most likely to want to buy your book, and then write your book description with the intent of only selling to that one audience. Okay. And there's something else I'm going to mention here in a few minutes, which is going to kind of tie into that. Okay. Tie into that basic premise of separating focus. So on the next slide, we need to understand why people buy. And I've kind of touched on that already. People buy because they have different reasons for making the purchase. Now, people generally do not care about your product. People are selfish. So the people who buy my training, they don't buy it because I made it. They could care less if I made it. What they care about is, can I help them solve their problems? They have a problem, they need a solution. So people are looking for products that can help them accomplish a goal. And so you might think that, well, that's for nonfiction writing, that's for training materials. That doesn't really have any application beyond training products. And that would be so far from reality. So let's break it down by genre. If we're doing fiction books, for example, Why do people buy fiction books? They want to be entertained. So they need to be able to read that book description and come away from that reading with the impression that they will be entertained by this book. Okay. So one of the ways I always recommend for fiction writers to describe their book is rather than the short, a 13-year-old boy discovered his from a magical family and he went to Hogwarts for his first year. That doesn't really tell you that much about the story. It tells you a little bit about the story. It kind of gives you a background into the story, but doesn't tell you a whole lot about the story itself. So, with the fiction, we want to kind of suck people into our imaginary world, and we want to show them through our book description that our story will be entertaining in a way that they want to be entertained. So the person who reads Harry Potter is going to be different from the person who reads Agatha Christie, right? So one's a murder mystery and one of them is a fantasy story. So each of them want to be entertained in a different kind of way. And so if you understand who your audience is and what they want from your book, then you can create the kind of book description that appeals to them and helps lead them towards that buy button to purchase your book. So with Harry Potter, we want to show them that it's entertainment in the magical world. And with Agatha Christie, it's entertainment in the mystery solving world. And The Martian is entertainment in the science fiction world. So we want to demonstrate this, but we want to show them not only what the story is about, but we want to demonstrate to them. When we're talking about fiction writing, we say, don't tell them about, show them. And the same thing applies when you're writing your book description. Show them how they are going to be entertained by the book that you are asking them to read. Okay. So when we go to nonfiction, say nonfiction biography, it's kind of the same thing. We are still focused on the entertainment principle, but we're also focused on the inspirational story of the person being documented inside our book. So we have to focus on the inspiration more than the entertainment, but it still needs to be written in such a way that's entertaining to the reader. Okay. And then you got your training materials. And this is the area where I play is I do a lot of training materials. And this is interesting in a way because I think what makes me successful as somebody who teaches is I can also be entertaining. And people still want to be entertained even though they are learning. And if you do training materials and you bore your readers to tears, they're not going to buy from you again. They might even refund this current product because, well, you bored them to tears. So we have to entertain them while we're teaching them. And I think that's kind of what distinguishes what I do from other people who create products in this space. Not everybody is willing to be entertaining. They just want to teach. But I am a strong and firm believer in the idea that we have to be entertaining while we teach. We have to, it's sort of like we want to hook them into our story. And it's important for me to get somebody from page one of this training material to the very last page. If somebody gets bored along the way and closes the book before they finish it, then I failed. And so that's what we have to do from my point of view when we're doing training materials is we do need to be entertaining as well. And I think that kind of comes down to why I have been successful in doing what I do. Now, when we make a rotation over, so with the training materials, people have problems that are causing them pain. So you can write a book, but it's boring. Okay. So you need to learn how to be an entertaining writer. And that is the problem solution strategy. The problem is that you've written a book and nobody gives you good reviews and nobody finishes your book and nobody recommends your book to other people and nobody comes back to buy your second book. So you have to that's what the problem is. That's where the pain is you're not as successful as author as you could be. And so the solution is let me teach you how to be entertaining even as a nonfiction writer. I hope that kind of makes sense to you. So it would even apply if we're doing how to promote your books. Uh, because here's the how, and if it's boring, it doesn't really serve any purpose because people won't finish reading it. So therefore, they won't get the value out of the training. So we have to understand what is who our customers are and what their problems are and what will lead them towards a purchase decision. If we understand that they are uh, down and out because nobody's buying and nobody's leaving reviews, then we can address that problem in our book description. If it's a matter of people love my book, but nobody's finding my book, then that's a book discovery issue. And then you can focus on telling people, let me show you how you can get more people to discover your book. You've written a great book. Now you need more people to find it. So let me show you how to do that. So that's a problem solution oriented process. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about coloring books and also about journals, but journals and planners really do play on the training philosophy because people have a problem and they're looking for a solution to that problem. And that planner and that journal can potentially help them resolve those issues within their personal private life. Okay. But let me go to coloring books for just a moment because that's kind of a hybrid as well because it's about entertainment. But it's more than entertainment in a lot of cases. And this is where I mentioned before, where I'm going to also talk about um, uh, the understanding who your audience is. Because with the coloring book, some people do it for sheer entertainment. Some people do it to explore their creative side. Some people do it as if they got like ADHD or they're senile, they want to sharpen their brain and fight against these things. So it's therapy for them, kind of a medical style therapy for whatever ails them. And then there's also we're fighting boredom. So if you understand why people would want to buy your coloring book, then you can address your book description to address the particular problems that person is having and why they would want to buy your book. So with people who are looking for entertainment, it's going to be your book description is going to say you'll find hours of entertainment within the pages of this coloring book. Okay, if somebody's doing it because they're trying to keep their mind sharp, then your book description is going to be along the lines of uh, with old age sneaking up on you, you may be struggling with how to keep your mind sharp. And the detail included within the coloring designs within this coloring book will help you do that because you have to concentrate and focus on the design that you're coloring, which allows you to sharpen the synapses in your brain, which allows you to retain more of your memory and your functionality into old age. Okay. And then like the therapy things, somebody who's suffering from anxiety. That's how coloring books actually went mainstream is people were using it to treat anxiety. And so if you're approaching an audience who is looking for as therapy with anxiety, you can talk about the calming effects of coloring in these coloring books. And if you color in our coloring books, they'll calm your mind and they'll calm your imagination and they'll bring you back down to earth and allow you to overcome the anxieties that may be plaguing you in your private life. So that's three different approaches on the coloring book. Each one of them is geared towards a particular sub audience who might be interested in coloring that coloring book. And you're specializing when you're describing that coloring book to the buyer. So the person who comes along who's interested in entertainment, if you give them an entertainment book description, then they will buy it because they think that your book will be entertaining. If they do it to fight senility, to keep their brain sharp, if your description addresses that and that's what their problem is, then they're more inclined to buy your coloring book. And if your thing is to, if your book description is focused on treating anxiety and bringing down the anxiety a person feels, and you talk about that in your book description, the person suffering from anxiety is going to be more inclined to buy your book. Now, if you try to do like the people did with the product creators and book authors, and you say, this will help you with entertainment and keeping your brain sharp and treating anxiety, you're going to fail because every person who reads that book description, they're looking for, will this book help me? Okay. And that's the question going through their mind as they're reading your book description. Is this a book that will help me with my problem? So the person who has anxiety problems, they're not going to be interested in keeping their mind sharp. And they're also not going to be interested in the entertainment element of coloring books. They're strictly focused on anxiety treatment. So the treatment for anxiety is using my coloring book to calm your brain, okay, and calm your fears. But if the person reading it is suffering from anxiety and they're looking for your coloring book as a solution to their anxiety problems, if they read also about entertainment and keeping your mind sharp, they'll say, well, those other two problems, they don't apply to me, so maybe this book isn't the right one for me. So you need to specialize when you're talking to your customers. Understand that every book has a multitude of different subsets of customers who would be interested in that book, and you need to focus heavily on one particular group of consumers and sell your book to that one particular group of consumers. So, why people buy? People don't care about your products. One of the products I looked at this morning, when I was looking at the sales copy for the product this morning, the number one issue with that particular product was it was 2,000 words talking about the product, never talking about how that product could help the user. Okay. So it went through and said, this is what the product does. And it will help you do this, 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 and this. But they never once addressed the problem that the consumer would be having that this would be a solution for. It was a great product. The product, there's nothing wrong with the product, but the sales copy is horrible because it was focused on the product and not on the consumer. And that's what we have to do. We have to focus on the consumer because the consumer doesn't care about your product. They care about what your product can help them do. So, like with the coloring book, we have to be focused on anxiety, or we have to be focused on keeping your mind sharp, or we have to be focused on the entertainment value of the coloring book. And the same thing applies when we're doing journals. So a pregnancy journal is going to appeal to the pregnant woman, of course, but is it written for the woman who is having her first child, or is it applicable to any woman who is on their first or their 15th child? Okay. So that's what we need to do when we talk about the pregnancy journals. We need to specialize and convey our message to readers in a way that they can read that and they can say, yeah, this is perfect for me. That's why we want to specialize. We want our books to be perfect for the person reading our book description, okay? And if we're trying to if we're trying to reach out to several different groups of consumers, we are going to fail there, because you're telling the person with anxiety that, oh, well, you have to suffer from anxiety and you have to want to keep your mind sharp and you have to want to be entertained. And they don't care about entertainment and keeping their mind sharp. They only care about their anxiety. Okay. I hope that makes sense to you. And in the case of the copy I was looking at this morning, everything was focused in the wrong place. It wasn't, it did not once address in 2,000 words the problem that the consumer is having, which the product would help solve. It was all about the product. And nobody cares about your product. They only care about what your product can do for them. Okay? And so the last step of this, and I'm running at 30 minutes right now, so it's a little bit longer than I intended. But what do people need to see to make a purchase decision? Well, they need to see a page that is a sales page that's focused on their needs, which I've talked about at great length within the context of this video. They also need to believe that the product will help them with their particular problem, which I've also covered throughout this video. And here's the most important part of it. They need to be able to see themselves using your book. So the person who is looking at a fiction book for entertainment, we want to demonstrate to them what genre we reflect, whether it's mystery or science fiction or romance or whatever the case may be. But we also have to invite people into the story so that they can imagine what it would be like for themselves to be reading your book. Okay. And the same with a biography. We want to show them how they are going to be inspired by this book that we have written. And the nonfiction, we also have to get people seeing themselves as users of our book. As they're going through the training, they have to be able to see in their mind's eye how using this book will help them accomplish a goal. Okay? The same with a planner and journal. It's goal oriented. And the coloring book, it's also goal oriented. So even though there's a certain facet of entertainment in every book, and there's a certain amount of problem solving in every book, even with the fiction, because the problem in the fiction book is they need to be entertained and they need to feel that your book is going to be the exact kind of entertainment they are looking for today. Okay? So they have to be entertained, they have to be educated, we have to help them solve a problem. And everybody's got a problem that appeals to any type of book or any type of product we're demonstrating can be moved back to a problem solution oriented book description. Okay. And even with the coloring book, imagine what it would be like to be coloring this particular image. So I did some training videos here a couple of years ago about the horses with coloring designs within the horse, and so just horsing around is what I call the videos. So with the just horsing around, we have to present the image to them of one of the designs within the book, and then we have to talk to them about how much fun it's going to be to color this particular design, or how coloring this design will help them combat anxiety, or how coloring this design will help keep their mental clarity intact. Okay? So we address the problem and we demonstrate to the reader, and it's like what I said before. With a fiction book, the trick is what they teach us all the time is don't tell people about your story, show them what's happening in your story. So instead of saying he went to the store and ran into an armed robbery suspect and found himself buried in a live armed robbery at the local grocery store, you demonstrate that story through showing the reader what is happening when that guy stumbled into that dangerous situation. So that's what we got to do with all the books we want to sell. And it comes down to the book description. There's two sides, and I don't have a slide for this, but there are two sides to selling books. One is book discovery, and one is demonstrating to the reader why they want to read your book. So the book discovery is getting people's attention and getting them to look at your book description. And then the second part is your book description makes the case to the consumer that this book is going to be an ideal purchase for them to make. Okay? So discovery, book discovery, and the sales copy. Your book description is your sales copy. We may not like to call it sales copy. And most people don't like calling it sales copy because they're like, oh, sales, I don't know anything about sales. But realistically, there's nothing that's difficult about sales. It's just demonstrating to people why they would want to own this particular book. Okay? So discovery is getting people to look at the description, and the sales side of it is making a convincing case in your book description to convince somebody to go ahead and click that buy button. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up right here. We're at 36 minutes. My name is Bill Platt. Have a great day.